Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. The situation for Christians in Syria is deteriorating quickly. The Islamic State militants seized several Assyrian towns this week. As many as 350 Christians have been kidnapped, according to reports, and militants have begun executing some of those taken hostage. Another 5,000 have fled. Syrian Catholic Archbishop Jacques Hindo confirmed to Fides News that the militants have taken full control of at least 3 towns along the strategic Khabur River in northeastern Syria. 40,000 or more Christians live in the region. Archbishop Hindo blames the current crisis on the West, in particular France and the United States. He called their policies towards Syria and ISIS disastrous, claiming that their irrelevant interventions have only helped jihadists and has destroyed Syria. Meanwhile, the jihadi threat is becoming global. In New York, 3 men were arrested Wednesday on charges of plotting to help the Islamic State wage war against the United States. Authorities say that one of the men first came to their attention last summer when the Brooklyn resident and citizen of Kazakhstan pledged support on a website sympathetic to ISIS. On it, he indicated willingness to assassinate President Barack Obama, to, quote, strike fear in the hearts of infidels. The second suspect was arrested at Kennedy Airport, allegedly on his way to join ISIS in Syria. The third, accused of helping fund the efforts, he was arrested in Florida. If convicted, each could face a maximum of 15 years in prison. Also on Wednesday, FBI Director James Comey said they're investigating the threat of possible ISIS sympathizers in all 50 U.S. states. He told a conference of the nation's attorneys general that the threat in the U.S. is indeed escalating as ISIS ramps up its online campaign.
ISIL in particular is putting out a siren song through their slick propaganda, through social media that goes like this. Troubled soul, come to the caliphate. Right? You will live a life of glory. These are the apocalyptic end times. You will find a life of meaning here fighting for our so-called caliphate. And if you can't come, kill somebody where you are.
And 3 East London schoolgirls who boarded a flight to Istanbul earlier this week are believed to be on their way to Syria to join the Islamic State's female-run police force. UK officials say the girls are among a growing trend of women who are interested in joining the terror group. In all, some 500 British nationals are believed to have been radicalized and en route to Syria. And Jihadi John, the British-accented militant seen in the beheading videos released by ISIS, has been identified according to multiple sources. The BBC, Washington Post, and 2 counter-terrorism groups in England are pegging the executioner as Mohammed Emwazi. According to the reports, the Kuwaiti native grew up in a well-to-do West London neighborhood and graduated in 2009 with a computer programming degree from the University of Westminster. Officials are not confirming or denying his identity, citing an ongoing terror investigation. And the British Parliament has rejected a bill that would have explicitly outlawed sex-selective abortions, defeated by a vote of 292 to 201. The measure would have banned abortions performed solely based on the sex of the child. The government contends that existing law already prohibits such abortions. However, MP Fiona Bruce, who introduced the bill, said the current law is ambiguous and is being interpreted in different ways. Parliament did overwhelmingly vote to study the matter and determine whether such abortions are widespread. And the House of Lords on Tuesday approved the creation of babies using the DNA of 3 people, making Britain the first in the world to do so. The IVF technique swaps out the defective genes of a mother in order to avoid passing on degenerative diseases. The U.S.-based advocacy group, the Center for Genetics and Society, called the decision an historic mistake that would turn children into biological experiments and sell wildly exaggerated hope to women already in challenging positions. Scientists have warned the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that it could take decades to determine if the techniques are safe. And the Affordable Care Act is headed back to the U.S. Supreme Court. On Monday, the justices agreed to hear a case challenging whether federal subsidies can be given to people living in states where the federal government runs the health care exchanges. Such a subsidy is not stipulated anywhere in the 2010 law. The law only mentions tax credits for people living in states that run their own health care exchanges. The Obama administration claims that the law allows all consumers to receive tax credits. Both sides agree that without the subsidy, the financial scheme that funds the law would collapse. And according to multiple reports, the Vatican Office of the Synod intercepted the mail delivery of a book addressed to participating bishops in last October's Synod on the Family. The book, Remaining in the Truth of Christ, contains essays by 5 cardinals affirming Catholic teaching on marriage. It was published in response to the proposal by Cardinal Walter Casper. He believes that Catholics who divorce and remarried should be allowed to receive communion. Father Joseph Fessio, editor of Ignatius Press and the publisher of the American edition of the book, confirmed that dozens of those volumes were received by the Vatican City State, but never reached the prelates to whom they were addressed. Vatican journalist Edward Penton reports that the books were intercepted on the orders of Cardinal Lorenzo Baldisseri, the Secretary General of the Synod of Bishops. Pentin said the cardinal was furious about the book and said that it would, quote, interfere with the Synod, end quote. Back in the U.S., the GOP presidential hopefuls are assembling at this year's Conservative Political Action Conference meeting in Washington. New Jersey Governor and possible GOP presidential nominee Chris Christie was the first in a lineup to include Jeb Bush, Governor Scott Walker, Governor Bobby Jindal, Ben Carson, and others. Christie sat down for an interview with radio talk show host Laura Ingraham, in which he addressed his brusque reputation, his record as governor of New Jersey, and his stance on social issues, including abortion.
I'm pro-life. I ran as a pro-life candidate in 2009, unapologetically spoke at the pro-life rally on the steps of the State House, the first governor to ever speak at a pro-life rally on the steps of the State House in New Jersey, and vetoed Planned Parenthood funding 5 times out of the New Jersey budget.
Yeah. When asked about his infamous sit down and shut up response to a heckler, he drew rapturous applause when he replied, "Sometimes people need to be told to sit down and shut up." I kind of like that. Also, in the U.S., some early trouble for Hillary Clinton's likely presidential run. Ethical questions are being raised over contributions to the Clinton Global Initiative by foreign governments. The Washington Post reports that the Clinton Foundation accepted millions of dollars from 7 foreign governments during Clinton's tenure as U.S. Secretary of State. Algeria, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman among them. The Post also reported that a third of the nearly $2 billion raised by the foundation since 2001 has come from foreign sources. These donations would seem to circumvent a federal law banning such contributions. That law is designed to prevent foreign influence over U.S. political candidates and national leaders. The State Department and a Clinton spokesman have declined comment. And the controversial bondage S&M film 50 Shades of Grey has already spawned its first criminal copycat. A freshman at the University of Illinois has been arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting a young woman in an apparent reenactment of a scene from 50 Shades of Grey. According to the victim's testimony, 19-year-old Mohammed Hussein brought the woman to his dorm room, asked her to remove her clothing, bound her hands and feet, and began to strike her with a belt. The victim claims to have asked the assailant to stop several times during the assault. Hussein's attorney claims that he believed the act to be consensual. The young woman later escaped and reported the incident to police. Hussein's bail has been set at $500,000.